by a few minutes, and welcome everyone, and good to see you here. So just if you could just introduce yourselves and perhaps give us a quick resume of who you are and where you how you've become involved in this, and then we'll go through your report. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Kia ora tātou, nā rata mihi, kua hui mai nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is George Hickton. I'm chairman of Hawke's Bay Tourism, and I've been in that role for the last 3 years. My background is, as some of you may know, I was Chief Executive of Tourism New Zealand for 10 years. And since that time I've been involved in a number of other tourism businesses. I also chair Weta Workshop, and I'm involved in Park Road Post film production on the board of Hobbiton, New Zealand, and currently working on producing a film museum for Wellington. So that's my sort of tourism credentials. And my part-time, I'm currently Deputy Secretary of Justice as well, but that's a role that I've been doing for the last 12 months at the request of the Justice Department, which I finish shortly. So that's me and my colleagues. I introduce my Deputy Chairman, Sam.
George. My name's Sam Orton. I'm the Chair of the Hawke's Bay Tourism Industry Association, and by way of that appointed to the Hawke's Bay Tourism Board through our constitution. I have a deep interest in driving Hawke's Bay forward through hospitality and tourism, and hence my interest in being on this board.
And I'm Annie Dundas, the General Manager of Hawke's Bay Tourism. I've been here as long as George, and previously was at Tourism New Zealand for 17 years, running most recently the North American market for about 6 years for TNZ, and in other international markets as well. So tourism's in the blood.
Thank you.
So how do you wish to run this? Take questions on the way through, or you've got a quick presentation and then perhaps
I think a quick presentation if we could, Mr. Chairman, and then questions afterwards.
There's some new thoughts around the table,
exactly.
Which
I'll look forward
be quite interesting. Yeah. Okay, so you'll run through your preso and then we'll take questions after.
So just by way of background, and the reason for our involvement in the tourism industry is in 2010 a great deal of concern was expressed in the region about where tourism was going. There were more than one entity representing the region, and it was quite clear that tourism visitor numbers were declining, and that there was considered to be a serious issue as regard to the way in which the Hawke's Bay region more broadly was presented. We came together and voluntarily, with the support of both the Regional Council and the tourism industry, we agreed to the combination of two entities, one Wine Country Tourism and the Old Venture Hawke's Bay. We operated in a voluntary cooperative basis for 6 months and put a presentation to this council that we would form Hawke's Bay Tourism, which would be in a sense a joint arrangement between the council and the industry. The council agreed to that. They agreed to 3-year funding for us. They've had a member on our board through that time, and the rest of the board members are actually provided by Hawke's Bay Tourism. And since that time, we've seen quite a number of things happen, but certainly one of the key things is we're now seeing growth in tourism in the region. We're seeing renewed confidence in the tourism industry, both in the way they're represented, but also in the future of the industry in this region. And we're starting to actually provide a much more competitive landscape with the rest of New Zealand, and we're seeing both growth in visitor numbers, but we're also seeing growth in spend that's coming to the region. And you will have also noticed over the last little while a number of new developments which are a consequence of Hawke's Bay Tourism now starting to work with the industry and producing things like the Food and Wine Classic Hawke, the Big Easy Cycle event, and a number of other activities that are currently underway or planned. So just by way, what we'd like to do is sort of give you that overview. Annie's going to give you sort of state of the nation. We'll present how we represent Hawke's Bay region, and talk a little bit about the year that we've got ahead. Just as a wee bit of a background, we've set ourselves the vision for the area that tourism is, within the Bay, is a vibrant but valued member of the region's economy. And we do highlight the fact that the only reason we're in this game is to actually increase the revenue that tourism provides to the region. It can do a lot of other things for communities as well in terms of how they feel and community environments that are produced out of the tourism industry. But ultimately it's an economic argument, and nearly $500 million is contributed to this economy by the tourism industry, and that potential is for that to grow significantly is still there. Our mission as an organisation is to get visitors to come here now, do more whilst they're here, in other words, understand the region more so they spend more time here, and ultimately to encourage others to come as well. And it's a pretty simple message, but that's what works in tourism. You can't turn any organisation around from one that was clearly in a state of crisis to one that's actually performing well overnight. And so we set a 3-year goal, and this is the slide I showed this council when we first started, that we would be taking this approach. And the first year we needed to actually form as an organisation, to start getting people to understand that this was now one business and that we represented all of the industry. So we did that. We started communicating both with this council, we communicate on a regular basis how we're doing, and starting to build the capability within the organisation. That was year 1. Year 2 was starting to build the confidence within the industry and to start to get a few runs on the board. We created the brand. We started to introduce a number of industry activities so that people understood what it is we're doing, the communication processes, websites, all those sorts of things which Annie will cover. And finally, we then started to look at not only what we were doing, but how what we do is coordinated with the rest of the region. And I don't have to tell you people this can sometimes be challenging in any region in New Zealand, and it's somewhat challenging in this region because we have multiple councils. But we are making progress in that regard. Just recently, Central Hawke's Bay have agreed to align or put their funding in with us and actually place their person inside our office and start working collaboratively with them. Just yesterday we met with the mayors of both Napier and Hastings and have reached an agreement that we'll be working in a cooperative way with them in how the region is represented across a range of things, not only promotion, but in terms of events, how eyesights will relate, how websites will relate. And we see the new leadership of Napier being very enthusiastic about how they can coordinate with what we do and the way we lead the tourism for the region, but also allow them to have a good contribution to that without losing their profile. So that's where we are. We're pleased with the results today. We're particularly pleased with the fact that we're now attaining growth in tourism, but also a renewed confidence in the tourism industry that it has leadership and it has a future. So with those few words, I'd just like to hand over to Annie to take you through one or two of the details. Thank you.
Kia ora everyone. Just to summarise some of the key statistics that we have available to us now, and the nice thing is that MB in its new form is creating some fantastic information, much more relevant and fair in an assessment of tourism across the country. So what we're seeing now is that our commercial accommodation stats year in September are up 3.5%. Private stays, so we have a monitor that measures those who stay with friends and family, is up 5%. So year end, both of those groups are up 4.6% year in September. So we are tracking pretty well, and we're on a much nicer, stronger curve. In fact, this year we've had growth in nearly every month, apart from I think January, February, and June. So all other months are up, and a number of those increases in sort of our lower season months are due to big events and conferences that have occurred in the region. Really importantly now, we have the regional visitor estimates, and these are based on credit card data and spend. They pick up everyone who comes to Hawke's Bay, so those who do stay in batches that don't get registered within our arrival stats, to cruise passengers. So we can start to see where the spend is really taking place. And this breaks down into how much they're spending on fuel, to passenger transport, to tourism services and products and accommodation. And it is up about 10 million on last year, and so this year it's at 457 million in terms of the contribution by visitors to Hawke's Bay. Just showing this little graph, and it's hard to show graphs on PowerPoint slides, but the key line is the blue line, which is Hawke's Bay, and the red dotted line is the New Zealand national average. So the top graph is our international spend by visitors, international visitors, which Hawke's Bay has tracked just above since 2008, and at about 80 million in the last year ended March 2013. And from a domestic tourism point of view, we've been tracking well above many of our other regional partners, and the spend on within year ended March is 480 million. So as you can see, Hawke's Bay has actually performed well, and one would like to think that when we started in the middle of 2011, end of 2010, this is when actually we've had some consistent activity and going on in our domestic and international market space. So I just wanted to give a flavour of how we talk about Hawke's Bay beyond the region. Obviously our job is to get the visitors in, so we have to present Hawke's Bay in a way that's appealing and compelling, and obviously talks to the markets that we fit to. So we have a brand, Hawke's Bay. Our tagline is "Get Me to Hawke's Bay." It's been in existence now, I think, for nearly 3 years, and so we use that in all of our advertising and marketing that we run from a consumer point of view. So any work we do domestically, and most of our work is online, carries the "Get Me to Hawke's Bay" tagline. We have variations of that depending on the experiences, so we'll look at particular things around whether it's the gannets or whether it's a particular activity in Napier, but that badge, "Get Me to Hawke's Bay," is on the end of any advertising that we run. So social media is becoming the norm for everybody. If you don't have a Facebook page, well, good luck. So in this space, we're doing a huge amount of work, and in tourism, it's all about the conversation. It's about that positive reinforcement of what the region offers, and it provides us with a great way to get visitors to give us feedback about the region and the experiences they have here. We still do a bit of work in print, and actually just released the Hawke's Bay Summer Guide, which is our first guide that we've distributed to 65,000 homes in the North Island. It runs through its validity right through till May and talks about what's on, what are the reasons to come to Hawke's Bay in the next 5 months. And so far we've had fantastic response from those in Auckland and Wellington and other spots. We talk to our consumer database, which is just under 20,000 every month, with deals and offers and what's on. It's all about that reason to get people to the region, which is all important. Consumer events that we run, we obviously run events within Hawke's Bay, but we do take part in events, the food shows, etc., outside of the region, which is a great way for us to showcase the region amongst our other competitors. And public relations and media, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But travel trade, which is a funny term, it's a tourism term, but it's all of those travel partners that exist around the world and in Auckland that sell our region as part of their international visitors coming in, and they're very essential to us. We were off their radar for a long time, and now we are firmly on it and getting great feedback from the visitors who've obviously had itineraries built for them through travel trade that have been and experienced the region firsthand. So it's a big part of our program, and one of our big shows next year in May, Trends, is probably the largest tourism show in New Zealand for buyers and sellers, and we have a very large Hawke's Bay presence there every year. One of our key activities this year has been to create video content and assets, and so working alongside Napier Tourism Services and Hastings District Council, we've created some pretty fabulous 30-second and 15-second ads, and these have gone out now and 240,000 people have viewed them. So we're pretty delighted with that result. One is themed around the family market, one's themed around that sort of slightly more urban weekend traveller, and the other is the active boomer. So there's plenty about the Hawke's Bay trails and obviously wineries and some of and Art Deco and some of our other assets. An active boomer. It's George. He's my sample size. As the baby boomer market's developing, and they're terribly fit, and actually we noticed with some of them, all of you I'm sure, if you are, and so what we're seeing are the numbers on the trails. That 50 plus, 60 plus market is actually perfect in terms of the trails and the type of product that it offers. So that's a really key market for us, and many of our passengers international sit in that camp as well. Just a quick look at some of the work, the The Get Me To Hawke's Bay piece on the left is just a look at some of our newsletter information that goes out to our 20-odd thousand consumers, and Facebook's obviously sitting at 18,000. And if you would like a Christmassy feel to Facebook, you can hop on and see the Hawke's Bay 12 Days of Christmas, which is evolving every day as we head into Christmas, and a bit of fun and getting great traction through social media. One of the things that we were really keen to do when we started as Hawke's Bay Tourism was get a handle on all of the regional information that was being produced and try and get some consistency, and so that as a visitor, if you're sitting in Auckland and you're picking up brochures, there's a very clear and distinctive positioning for Hawke's Bay. So with our partners in Food Hawke's Bay Wine Growers, the Creative Hawke's Bay, and some of the business associations, we've created and developed the covers of many of their brochures so that we have a very distinctive look and feel. And, on a brochure shelf, it actually looks fairly compelling, and visitors can understand which piece they're picking up and what they need. The key ones in here, and up the top, we have the conference guide, which was a guide we produced this year, which is all about group tourism and conference and events and all those facilities that the region has, and that has been really well received. The top right is the summer guide, so that's the cover. I hope many of you have seen that. It's been distributed far and wide. Down the bottom on the right is our new visitor guide for 2014, which is a map, huge big map, and Vicky's got some copies for you to leave with you. And obviously the Hawke's Bay Trails map, which this council particularly and other councils have invested a huge amount of money in, and that for us is one of our key. We distribute 70,000 cycle trails maps per annum.